My guest today is running for the Attorney General of Massachusetts. He is Michael Walsh. Michael, welcome back to normal.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Great name. Hoping and praying, right?
Yeah. No, we're trying to get back to normal. I appreciate that. We are hoping and praying that we get back to normal. I'm glad you finally are here, because this is, if your name's been in the papers for not the best reasons, not bad reasons, but pain in the butt reasons.
Yes.
And I'm glad to say that, I was kind of waiting for this as like once it cleared the hurdle. You are on the ballot.
I am definitely on the ballot
for November. You will be the Republican candidate for Attorney General. The website to help support Michael is MikeWalsh4AG, FORAG.com. Go to it today. Give him some money, volunteers for his campaign, and help him out. But we're glad to see he's on the ballot. Glad the news is cleared and you've cleared that hurdle. And I must say, you tell me, the background of it, without getting too much into it, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but did you use your legal expertise to assist in your victory to get on the ballot?
Quite a bit. There was hundreds of hours of lawyering involved in that.
Okay. Lawyer, when I talk to lawyers, they always use lawyering as a verb. I always like lawyering. You only hear that from lawyers when they say lawyering.
I suspect it's from the bar journals.
Yeah.
We think very highly of ourselves as a profession.
But you used your expertise to help yourself get there. Well, that's good to hear. Great to hear. Okay. First question for out of the gate here. And tell the audience, tell the state, tell everybody why you are running and for Attorney General, and then we'll get into some of the things that you want to do as Attorney General. But why are you running for AG?
Someone has to, but the short answer is the job isn't getting done, and it's a really important job, and it ought to get done. You know, utility bills go up because the Attorney General isn't doing anything. Crime's going up because the Attorney General isn't doing anything. I'd like to try and change that.
Excellent.
I'd tell you the truth just in the American way, but apparently there aren't enough Superman comic book fans anymore.
They murdered they murdered the movie franchise.
Yes, very much so.
That's another topic for my personal podcast. We'll get into pop culture some other time. But that's good to hear. Yes, it isn't getting done. When I've seen from the past few years from both this Attorney General, our governor, other people in state government throughout, I'd say the Commonwealth and actually our current governor, who was the previous Attorney General.
Yep. They
seem to be preoccupied with doing, I won't say nothing, but almost doing nothing but suing Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I guess they're allowed to, but then everything goes by the wayside, right? And it's just this bad strategy. I think it's purely political, where they just keep suing Trump over and over and over again, and every word out of their mouth is Trump, Trump, Trump. And meanwhile, the exact issues you just mentioned are getting neglected.
Absolutely. The Attorney General job is one of the most important in our state. It is one of the jobs that needs attention to detail. It needs focus. It's part of what keeps the playing field level. It's part of what keeps crime down. It keeps our utility bills. The profile of the Attorney General is amazing. Hospitals, nonprofits, utilities, crime, you name it. And yet the current incumbent is so busy focused on suing the president, she's not doing anything else. You probably saw, I think in February, she actually went back to the legislature and asked for $9 million more to hire more litigators to sue the president more often.
I struggle with this because I don't think she's not qualified to do the job if that's the only thing that she can do. If she's neglecting crime, there's actual crime. We have fraud all over the place. We see examples of it. No investigations, no pursuing this. We have scandal after scandal after scandal in both the executive branch and now the legislative branch. She won't adhere to the audit, or won't support the audit, won't argue before the court for the audit that the people voted for. There are so many important state issues, yet she thinks she's going to win some brownie points. I don't know with who. I guess her own party, just by going Trump, Trump, Trump all the time. It's really quite sad if we look at it, and our state is deteriorating for it.
Absolutely. Not only that, the only important constitutional duty the AG is actually specifically tasked with is preparing the ballot question summaries, and you heard she tanked 3 of them. 3 out of 6.
Let's do it. Let me pause right there. I'm going to switch to something right here. There we go. Let's listen to her get asked that. Tim Dunn over the Boston Herald, so this will be on the screen here.
Okay.
One question from Tim.
Do these 3 errors call into any question at all, your qualifications or your team's qualifications at all? How would you explain this to voters saying, are you qualified to continue to doing your job if these 3 errors are happening and they're heavily affecting this ballot?
We have 47 that we approved. We had 44 we certified. We had 6 challenges. We got 3 wrong. I think that's a great record. That just tells me we have more to do to be better. Any institution, whether it's media outlets or in the industry, if they can get 100% right every time, wow, that doesn't happen. We own these mistakes. I own these mistakes. And now we'll move forward to improve our process to get it right the next time.
Thanks.
Okay, Michael, answer me this. You're a lawyer. I'm not. 3 for 6 is great if you're hitting cleanup for the Red Sox. The Red Sox just started to win a few games as I record this, and they're just over 500, which is what she's talking about being 500. And now they have a winning record. Being over 500 is a winning record, meaning you're above 50%. 50% seems rather low for, I would assume, what are clerical and paperwork-based arguments that have nothing to do with whether they're approved by the SJC to go on the ballot or not. Do I have that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So she's boasting about an F, 50%. Less than an F.
Good point. It is an F.
You would do almost as well with a coin toss, but the whole job is to produce a yes-no question, a fair, concise and fair summary of the ballot of a yes and no question so the voters can vote. She didn't have to save it. She whiffed it. And 44 out of 47, well, that just means that no one bothered to challenge the other 44. It doesn't mean that she got them right.
Right.
It just means no one was challenging the other ones.
Okay.
So her error rate is probably way worse. And more importantly, this is just framing a yes or no question for the ballot. It's nothing else. It's
that I hadn't heard that before, but I'm glad you're mentioning it because it does make sense. She's not arguing before the Supreme Court of the United States. She's not arguing to put somebody in jail. She's not arguing, before a court of law for a case, a defendant, a prosecutor, whatever the case may be, where it could go. It's not as clear cut. There could be anything. This is just to get a yes or no question on the ballot. Does it qualify for the ballot? She only did it 50% of the time. That's pathetic. It's failing, and you're right, failing. It's a F.
Not only is it an F, but when you tie back to it, people were wondering whether or not she tanked the income tax question on purpose. Yeah. And she was actually warned in real time about the error that caused them to lose. And she was warned of the error, and she went ahead and did it anyway. Yeah. That is deliberate.
Okay. So is that an ethical question that we can, is there a mechanism? I guess I'll ask you in a different way. Is there a mechanism that exists that can rectify that? Because that's a real dangerous situation we have here. Now you talk about, the Democrats love to talk about democracy, but as soon as a ballot question that people can vote on comes to, they're doing everything they can to manipulate the situation so that people can't vote on it. What is that? Is there a mechanism? And 2, how could we, I don't know, other than voting for you, getting you into office, who would do it fairly and honestly, what are the options?
So there's been a lot of talk about trying to amend the process, but one of the things I'd love to see is to see the Attorney General take a different position in the case law. Right now, you go out, you propose your ballot question, you hammer out the concise wording, it gets certified, and then you go out and you collect 75,000 signatures. Then it sits with the legislature for 6 months, and then you have to go out and collect another 15,000 signatures. And of course, she isn't whiffing this until after you've collected 75,000 signatures, which is no small task.
Yeah.
She ought to be defending that effort, and her efforts have been weak. But there's no reason that she couldn't ask the courts for a determination ahead of time, or there's no reason that she couldn't try and save portions of the question the same way we try and save portions of laws. Sometimes when a law gets struck, we only strike a portion of it, and she didn't do any of that here. Right. So as far as I can tell, she basically threw up her hands like the French army and said, we're done. And left with that.
Yeah. All right. That's a shame. I mean, I don't know what to do about that. I've had sort of other similar conversations with guests in the past of when somebody just doesn't do their job, there's no other option other than to vote them out. There's no, we maybe naively, we think, you mentioned Superman comics and stuff like that. We grew up with this, our truth, justice, and the American way. Absolutely. But it doesn't seem very just when the attorney general, who you vote in to enforce the law, who to do their job, when they can just go, oh, I'm going to do my job bad because the politics of it might not work out, and it would hurt her, her political party in the end. I mean, I guess that's the real world, but I said this in the other episodes. The only real way to change these people is to get them out of office, to vote them out of office. And I fear that people just do not understand the seriousness of what we are facing, especially with stuff like that. That's just, the income tax question, but other really important issues going on.
All kinds of stuff. The liberal side of the spectrum has made quite a study in the last 15 years of using important constitutional guide rails. They figure out when and where they can fail in an unchallengeable way, and the only consequences are at the ballot box.
Yeah, no, that's really it's off-putting and disconcerting,
Boy,
to say the least. Okay, so obviously you want to restore normalcy, some sense of ethics to the office. But what in the meat and potatoes of the world, the AG, what are some of the criminal aspects or even civil aspects that we can see coming out of your administration should you get into office? What are your top 3, top 5 priorities? And let's get into some of those aspects.
Well, the ones that are easy to promise to the public as sort of campaign pledges is first of all, we want to tamp down and amputate zoning and restore local control over neighborhoods.
Okay.
One of the other things we want to do is we want to try and work very hard to get back into the business of prosecuting crime. There are billions of waste and fraud and abuse in our system, and whether you go after it criminally or even if you just use the State False Claims Act, there's no reason that we should be suffering. I mean, the auditor and the inspector general and the comptroller and all kinds of other state agency watchdogs put out published reports about fraud and waste and abuse, and this is before you get into think tank studies like the Pioneer Institute and what have you, and they say that the frauds run amok, that we're wasting incredible amounts of money, and there's never any follow-up.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'd love to see a rule where anytime the auditor or the inspector general or the comptroller puts out a report that says fraud, at the very next day there's an announcement that says that the attorney general is going to begin a criminal investigation of it. If we follow up on every publicly disclosed issue of fraud, that's going to mean at the very least that fraudsters can't allow their fraud to go public and be shameless about it.
Well, I mean, at a minimum, I would think that a fraudster doesn't care too much about that because they're doing that, but they're more afraid of going to jail. Can you do me a favor and perhaps you might not know this from a nuts and bolts perspective, but I'm curious just because I don't know. How does that work when somebody starts an investigation into somebody? Do they hire, the lawyers in their office? They go to a judge and they say, I want to subpoena records. I want to arrest this person. What does that look like?
In some narrow contexts, like when you're doing public charities investigations, you have to go to a judge and get approval for certain CID's records. When you're doing a criminal investigation, normally the attorney general has an in-house assigned state police detective unit.
Oh, okay.
And they help assemble a case. And there are horror stories of these cases taking 7 or 9 years to build. But the short answer is that office has 400 litigators.
Okay.
And there should be no problem putting together a case, and then it comes to a grand jury. There's typically one person who manages the schedule of the grand jury, and you'll get a block of 12 hours to present 4 witnesses over 5 days spread out over 8 weeks or whatever it is. And you go in and you present your case to the grand jury, and then as long as you get more than half of the grand jury to vote yes on your charges, then it gets handed up to the clerk's office. They publicly unseal the indictment, and the person gets arrested or brought in, and then the court case starts.
Yeah.
On a civil side, it's just a matter of deciding whenever you think you've got a case, and then you can just write your own civil complaint, and you file it whenever you're ready.
And they have to come into court to meet you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned something, though, the state police has or the Attorney General's office has its own investigative unit within the state police.
Yes.
So that piques something with me. In the past couple of years, we've seen what I'll call blatant corruption within the state police. And, this is a Republican podcast. I'm a Republican. I support the cops. I support our law enforcement. I do. But, and I'll say this is a big but, and I don't think I'll get any pushback. If you're a dirty cop, I want you locked up and throw away the key. And I think we've seen that, right? There's, I hesitated. There's the headline of the Karen Reed trial, John O'Keefe's murder. We saw really not just ugly behavior by the state police detectives, but an unethical behavior, but criminal behavior. And you know, you have something where a Boston police officer was murdered. In my opinion, this is Jeff's opinion, you know, and it came out to be this way, you know, the person they wanted to indict and put into jail, I don't think was guilty and was determined not to be guilty. But that murder is still unsolved.
Along with hundreds of others across the state.
Yes. That, and to me, obviously, public safety, that's job number one for chief law enforcement officer, which you would be. What, you know, like, again, there's way more good cops than there are bad cops.
Yes.
But what do we do about that? Because this to me is like, that's how civilization starts to unravel, is if our law enforcement or the legal entities, that if there's corruption and there's graft going on, and it's, you know, the good cops their hands are tied because of the bad cops. What do we do in those situations?
What you have to do is, on day one, you have a sit down with all the chiefs of police across the entire state, and you tell them that as long as the cops are honest and straightforward, that you've got their back. As long as they own up to their mistakes, that no one's going to jail for mistakes.
Right.
But that if there's lying, if there's cheating, if there's corruption, the bad cops are going, no matter what. And anyone who obstructs that investigation is going too.
That's good.
And there's not necessarily a bad idea that, you know, some kind of a supervisor rule that if, you know, we've wondered, the Karen Reed trial is an excellent example. We've wondered about the sergeant who was supervising Mr. Proctor, and he apparently had knowledge of some of this bad stuff going on, and he got a slap on the wrist. There's not necessarily a bad idea to be had this conversation with the chiefs of police that you have on day one and say, you know, you have to tell your supervisors that if they know what's going on and they don't fix it, you know, truth and justice, we can understand mistakes. And here's the thing with policemen, you have to be very careful to protect their mistakes because, you know,
what's that rule called? It's qualified immunity.
Yep.
Is that what it is when it protects the police? For obviously, because they're in a different category. Police are in a different category. Law enforcement is. Okay.
Yes. So qualified immunity basically protects you as long as whatever you've done isn't obviously and clearly illegal or unconstitutional.
Okay.
But think about a police officer who, you know, there was a incident, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, and there's some guy with a knife who may or may not be mentally ill who's coming towards a Boston cop, and, you know, how do you know if he's just a guy who doesn't know which way is up or if he's a guy intending to kill you? You only have a split second to make that call.
Right.
And if you make that call bad, as long as you don't do it maliciously, as long as if you make that call bad, you need to know that the people behind you, including elected officials, are going to have your back. Because that's what trusting the police means, is that even when they make a bad call, even if they make an awful call, as long as it's a mistake, it's not a deliberate wrongdoing, you got to have their back.
Yeah.
But in turn, you got to expect them to be honest, and they got to own up to their mistakes. Yeah, I shot the guy, and maybe it was a mistake. You know, you got to own that. Maybe there's a ding to the career, but no one should be going to jail for mistakes. You probably saw that the Suffolk DA is prosecuting a Boston police officer who was shooting someone for shooting someone who was actually coming at them.
Yeah.
We actually have the good guy who's been charged with the crime,
Right.
and he's facing down serious jail time.
I mean, so this is where we see ideology come into play, I think,
Very much so.
where there's this leftist ideology where I think, you know, it's very much clear that they want to, there's some destabilization, intentional destabilization of both the city and call it nationwide, right, based on ideology. And, you know, that those are cut and dry. We know that that's no good, and why crime goes up. I guess what, you know, you have that situation. It comes down from elected officials, call it Mayor Wu, who is a bit more, you know, both literally and figuratively liberal on crime. Lets more crime happen. Less people get arrested because why bother arresting them? They're going to be back on the street in 48 hours. So they don't even bother to get arrested because the prosecution is very lenient. So we see crime escalation on that. And it's only, I've talked about this on other episodes. The criminal population is relatively small.
Yes.
But you call it, you know, 0 to 5% somewhere in there. There's not everybody's out there committing crime. So when crime goes up, it's mostly because that few small percentage is committing more and more crime, not because it jumped from 5% to 10%. That's not how it works, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so once you lock up the bad guys, crime does go down. It is an absolute fact. So when we have these bad policies, it starts to erode the legitimate public safety that we need our elected officials to abide by and do their job. So, question for you. So I guess two questions. And why not? We touched on Karen Reed as Attorney General. Would you reopen the investigation into John O'Keefe's murder?
Absolutely. It's an unsolved homicide.
Yeah.
You have to prosecute crime.
From the state level.
From the state level. Yeah. Listen, the first trial, it went bad, and then they went outside, and they hired a special counsel at more than $1 million of expense to the state taxpayers. That should have been handed up to one of the other DAs or handed up to the state attorney general's office. If the Norfolk DA had a conflict, then he shouldn't be going outside. He should be handing it to another already on staff, already publicly paid prosecutor to hands off to give the case a fresh review and make sure they were really going after the person who did it.
Okay.
So the fact that they kept that in-house and they continued doing it a second time, that was an incredible waste of the taxpayers' money, in addition to gross injustice.
All right, well, I'll say that for all the folks who do want to see justice for John O'Keefe, because it doesn't look like it's going to be happening unless Mike Walsh gets elected Attorney General. So good luck to you on that.
Thank
for
you.
Sure. My second question, I guess, would be power of again, state prosecutions, right? So the state has the authority to arrest, prosecute under state law where there are, call it when municipalities neglect to prosecute crime. How would that work? So we have a situation where there's been more hands-off in Suffolk from Mayor Wu, from, call it Suffolk DA, it filters through to the police chief. Do you have authority under state police, under state statute to go after, say, certain criminals? And if you're, say, the state police gang unit, and people are operating in a neighborhood in Boston, but like the Boston PD hands are tied because of politics up top, what can you do to help that situation?
In most cities and towns, Boston's sort of a little funky. Most of what the local police do is local level order enforcement. They're doing breaches of the peace. They're doing obvious crimes that you see in the moment. When there's someone standing over you with a bloody knife, when someone's driving drunk down the street. Crimes that require investigation normally get kicked up to the district attorneys and the attorney general, and those get investigated by the state police because of the detective work involved.
Okay, so it would automatically fall under your purview.
More or less, yes.
Okay.
But more importantly, the attorney general and the district attorneys share a contemporaneous authority to prosecute any criminal violations of state law at whether it be locally or not. Basically, the locals are additional help, but the primary responsibility falls on the district attorneys and the attorney general, who have the same authority to enforce all those rules wherever. So if the state police know that there's a gang unit at some house, or know that there is a gang at some house, they can go in. They don't have to wait for Boston. It's good form to let Boston know that you're coming, but sometimes for security reasons, or down in New York City, there have been a bunch of cases where gangs have actually had moles in the local police or have rubbed shoulders with them too much.
Really?
And so sometimes when you're the state police or even the feds and you come in, you don't warn local police. You just go ahead and do your thing.
Right, because it might leak out that,
Yes.
Yeah, okay, if there are people talking. Okay, that's understood. So, I imagine the state attorney general's powers are broad, right? So,
Very much so.
This is good, because sometimes when we have people who get elected to local office, call it Mayor Wu or Zoran Mamdani, they think they're elected to some independent nation state that doesn't have to abide by the United States Constitution or the state constitution, where there are very clear laws that need to be enforced. What would you describe your judicial philosophy as? I mean, this is getting a bit more esoteric than maybe the audience would care, but I think it's important for people who are voting, or maybe call it maybe. There's a blend, originalist, textualist. Is it a living constitution? These are important legal questions.
Debated questions.
Yeah.
I am a libertarian by bent, but to answer your question, I'm very much an originalist.
Okay. So the words mean what they mean when they were written down.
The words mean what they mean when they were written down.
Right.
You have a right to carry arms. You have a right to be safe from search and seizure. You have a right to speak freely from government consequence. You also have a right to practice religion and freely do so, because that's what the words meant when they were written.
That's good to hear. I agree with that. See, this is one thing I mentioned this with. We had I had on Frank Crimmins, who's running for governor's council, also was a judge and and an attorney, and we were talking about that. It's like, what's the point of the legislature? The point of the legislature is to make a law. What do you do with that law? Well, you write it down. And you write it down with words. I mean, just as simple, as silly as that. Like, the words need to mean what they mean when you write them down for the purpose of the law that you're trying to pass. And I won't say they're not open for interpretation, because obviously everything's open for interpretation, but they really do mean what they're written down. That's why the body exists, why the legislature exists, and the courts exist, because I guess people knew that, well, people might try to bend the law or push the law as far as they can go. So you need that check and balance on it. But yeah, it does mean what it means when it was written down.
It means what it means. And it won't surprise you to know that there are some boneheads in the legislature, and they write some dumb laws sometimes. For example, they created a commission for people with disabilities in Chapter 3. And then they went out and created another commission for people with disabilities in Chapter 6. Yeah. There's no reason they can't be the same body, but they're not. They didn't bother to check their own rules. But when they write stuff down, you have to take it for what it is, and take it on its own terms.
You might know this. I forget who said it. The court's not there to. It doesn't exist to rectify bad law. Like, bad laws can get passed. Maybe it was Scalia. I don't know if I'm getting that right. Somebody will fact check me on that.
It sounds more like Wendell Holmes. But
okay,
yes,
all right.
You've got a Supreme Court justice there somewhere.
Okay. All right. So judicial philosophy as more of an originalist. It's good to hear. I mean, you are a Republican, so that the living, breathing Constitution isn't necessary for hold water here on this show, but good to hear. So I've covered at the high level a lot of the issues. What are some of the things that maybe people aren't front of mind, right? Some things that you're hearing, things that you could go after, things that you could do at your office that might be below the headline that people are not thinking about, or might not be everyday conversation.
Aside from trying to root out fraud and public benefits and enforce the auditor and the inspector general's investigations, one of the most important things that we can do is we can really try and eliminate gaps in the justice system. For example, if you get ripped off for more than $2,500 and there's any kind of electronic component involved, it's too big for the district court, but there are only about 20 or so state prosecutors who prosecute superior court level crime, because the Attorney General's office doesn't do it very often unless there's a systemic component. And I think
what does that mean, systemic component?
So the Attorney General's office, as constituted right now, they'll go after Facebook, or they'll go after, they'll go after like a systemic error or a big business. But if you personally get ripped off for $5,000 and you're in the superior court level, if you don't catch the attention of the local DA, and like I say, there are only like 20 superior court prosecutors, your case falls by the wayside.
Right.
The Bristol County District Attorney's Office only has about 26 trial-level spots, yet the Attorney General's Office has 400 litigators. They should be litigating 8 times the number of cases, and they're not. They're focusing on a lot of it's because they're distracted.
So this is where the politics comes into play, where we suspect it. I mean, I don't know what the Attorney General's Office is going on, but every couple of weeks she's announcing a new suit against Trump. So, all right. So from a practical perspective, a functional perspective, all the lawyers in the office are doing nonsense.
Yes. And so if we take them and refocus them on crime, particularly crime that either the district attorneys can't pick up or making it more effective, we'll eliminate holes in our system.
Yeah.
We'll also pick up so much incredible manpower. I don't know if you saw, but the Committee for Public Counsel has been getting whacked.
I didn't. What's that? What's the Committee for Public Counsel?
The State Public Defender Agency. They're getting whacked. Basically, some of the bar advocates are on strike, and so there was investigation.
Oh, all right. I heard about that, yeah.
It's actually going to be a ballot question on it this fall, because the legislature can't help but putting their fingers into it, making a mess of it. But one of the things is that they were accused of, by the Inspector General, of not doing enough, not carrying enough caseloads. They're not... The private bar advocates that are on strike are carrying too big of a caseload, because the Inspector General says that the professional, full-time, on-staff public defenders aren't carrying a big enough caseload. I think that's also true of the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
I think
and they would, like, the Inspector General would, I guess they're doing their own report of all the state agencies? Something like that?
The auditor inspects all of them. The Inspector General goes after specific instances of fraud, waste, and abuse, typically in public bidding and contracting. For whatever reason, when the legislature gave the bar advocates a pay raise, they requested a specific report from the Inspector General's office on why they were having to pay more private advocates when the professional on-staff public defenders, and the answer is that the professional staff is allegedly not meeting their 20% quota of carrying enough cases. We're actually releasing crooks out into the streets in Essex, Middlesex, and Suffolk counties right now, still, because there aren't enough public defenders to give everyone the attorney, the indigent, the attorney that they're allowed.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And it's a problem.
Can the Attorney General's office affect that for the public defenders, or is that more in the legislative side? They have to either allocate more funds or redistribute.
There are lots of
cases?
clever and creative solutions that you can try that hopefully don't require money. For example, the UK has what they call a unified bar. You know, if you're a barrister in the UK, one day you're doing prosecution, next day you're doing defense. Now, you'd have to be really careful because our ethical rules are different, but there's no reason you couldn't look at solutions like that, because we shouldn't be releasing crooks out onto the street because there aren't enough lawyers running around. There are plenty of paid on-staff lawyers working in the government.
I got to tell you, somebody saying, well, we don't have enough lawyers is not a phrase I thought I'd ever hear. Okay. Rapid fire.
Fire away.
Ayanna Presley's husband just got a $2 billion contract to build a courthouse out in Springfield. That was out from and he went from being released from prison for cocaine trafficking to becoming a consultant to now being a very wealthy person, and their net worth is now over $8 million.
Plus, they just found some poor dead girl in her house.
Yeah, well, let's not comment on that because we don't know what the situation.
Understood.
More to come on that.
More to come.
But can the AG investigate how that process took place, and would you investigate it?
Definitely, although the primary responsibility is in the State Ethics Commission. And one of the things that you would also want to know is, would you believe it or not, but the Public Finance Office has made hundreds of referrals for corruption for politicians. And despite hundreds of referrals, the Attorney General's office doesn't bring any of those cases. We did a study the last 3 years, and they've only brought 64 cases of public corruption. Despite being referred hundreds of cases and hundreds, the Attorney General's office is not interested in enforcing any of this stuff.
Wait a minute. Well, how many cases have been? So lots of cases have been brought to it. They've only done 64?
So I'm kind of confusing apples and oranges, but
Okay.
they've only brought 64 cases under the Conflict of Interest Law, which is Chapter 268A.
Okay.
Yet we know that there are hundreds of referrals that have been made by the State Ethics Commission, which does 268A, also by OCPF, which does Chapter 55, which is sort of the election enforcement law, the campaign finance law.
Yeah.
It also deals with public money and whatnot. But the short answer is that the attorney, there are also referrals from DEP, there are referrals from all kinds of agencies. And the Attorney General's office is so busy suing the president, she can't even do the cases that state government, other entities in state government have looked at, said this is a problem, there is a case here, and they're not doing anything. They're not picking them up, they're not doing anything. So to answer your question, like a $2 billion courthouse deal, if it were me, I would have said that. So the deal is that we're paying them to build a building on land that we don't own, and then when we're done with the lease, we're going to hand back the keys, right?
Right. So if nothing else, it's a bad deal.
Well,
yeah. I mean, but that's not the Attorney General's job to determine that.
That's not the Attorney General's job. But spending public money when you're not getting anything in return, that is a waste of public funds, and that you can police.
Okay.
So that's the public use requirement, and it's public spending.
All right. So there's legal mechanisms in place and statutes that can be exercised
Very much so.
to go after that in some form or another based on existing statute. But I think, everybody that sees that headline, and I mean everybody, knows that he got that contract because of political connections and corruption, right? So now, do we have the text message? Do we have the email? Do we have the envelope that got passed under a table or whatnot, or the cushy job? No. And we're not, that's those types of things are speculation. But
that right there is why the Attorney General has both civil remedies and criminal remedies. If you can't find the smoking gun, you may not be able to bring a criminal prosecution, but you're sure if it smells funny and looks bad and doesn't meet the constitutional or statutory requirements, you can still go after it civilly.
See, that's good to hear.
And the Attorney General's office, as you already know, has no interest in doing any of that because it's politically connected.
Yeah. All right. So this is the thing that we really need and I'll say this, a politically neutral AG. I sort of want a politically neutral AG. I want somebody that sees the crime and will go after the crime no matter who it is, whatever political party they're going to be a part of.
Without fear or favor is the promise I made to the convention.
All right. I like that a lot. Let's see here. I'm trying to think. Oh, there was one more question that I had, and it's what do we do? I mean, a lot of this ties to what a governor or legislature do, but what can the attorney general do about, well, I was going to say the fraud within the public benefits sector, but I guess that just seems very light. I mean, do you have any power would you have any power as attorney general where the gentleman that was arrested for dealing cocaine out of the office in Western Massachusetts that was an aide to Morley, and now he's using his SNAP benefits down in Disney World. I mean, I don't. Did the law change where you can't buy things out of state? I thought that used to be a thing. Did that get changed and now they can? Or can you go after him for that?
You may remember the last big scandal was where people were actually getting SNAP benefits while they were on cruises in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
That was about 7 or 8 years ago. And they were supposed to have tightened up the rules, but then Deval Patrick came in and said, well, the rules are too tight, so it's discouraging people from accessing
So you need
benefits.
the legislature to act on that.
Not exactly. First of all, anytime you can show fraud or wrongful receipt of public benefits, you can always go after it criminally. But second of all, we also have a False Claims Act because about 25 years ago, there was a real concern the Attorney General didn't have enough tools. And so we passed a general False Claims Act, very similar to the federal one, that says anytime you can prove that someone's made false representations to the state to get money, you can go and get it back, whether it be a contractor or someone receiving benefits. And
that's a blank check.
Yeah. And in terms of the False Claims Act, it's like this most muscular statute based on the federal one written during Civil War to prevent war profiteering.
Yeah.
And yet we're not using it.
Okay.
Plus, you're entitled to, if you can prove a wrongful intent under the False Claims Act, you're entitled to scrape back 3 times the amount of money wrongfully taken, plus make them pay for the prosecution, the attorney fees for prosecuting it.
All right.
So
you
that'll be really muscular.
Just
and we're not using it.
promise me personally when you get elected that you'll start going after that under all these statutes and
Absolutely.
all these weapons.
It is one of the first things I'm promising to do.
Okay.
We're going to revitalize the False Claims Act, go after fraudsters, and make them pay it back. Even when we can't make a criminal case, we should be able to get the money back plus more for the trouble in hunting it down.
All right. I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you your closing argument.
Closing argument.
For an attorney, what your closing argument, your pitch to the voters to elect you in November? What do you have to say?
And citizens are way unhappy. The governor is underwater, even though she is at the moment leading the Republican candidates challenging her. And the answer is we Republicans need to convince voters that we're not scary. We need to tell them that if they want change, they have to vote for it. We need to tell them that what they've got now isn't working. It's not a fair system. It's not a fair shake. It's not a level playing field. Nothing's on the level. Someone's benefiting from everything. Whether you're politically connected or not, we're creating different classes of people based on who you know, and that's not fair. We need to go back to a basic, even level, even keeled, the neutral playing field, and that's what I'm going to bring. I only need the voters to have a little bit of courage in the secret ballot box when the curtains close to be willing to vote Republican. And I think they're ready to. I really do.
I hope you're right. The website is Mike Walsh for AG.com. Michael Walsh is the Republican candidate, and he will be on the ballot in November. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. You're an awesome guest. You're an awesome host. Wow. God, it's been a long day. I'm sorry.
It's been a long day. We're recording late. The QR code is on the screen for you to help support this show and the Republican Party, as is the link. Please go there and get and help donate today. This will get our message out there to the voters. We really need your support, so please go scan the QR code, donate today, go to the link on the screen. Michael, it's been a great conversation. I wish you the best of luck. We need somebody who's actually going to do the job as Attorney General to be Attorney General, so I wish you the best of luck. You have my vote. You have my support. I'm glad you can make it to the show. I'm glad you're on the ballot.
Thank you much.
And with that, we will see you next time.
Got it.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.